I have the agenda in front of me as well. So as Jan said, welcome back, everybody. I'll see Jan's on the phone. The only interruption may be that in a few moments' time, my dogs are going to kick off because they're anticipating being let free in a field, and being in a field is much more enjoyable than being stuck in a home while I'm working in the other room. So I'll just have to disappear for a moment. So I hope. So this is our new format of having our monthly meetings rather than the 3 monthly meetings. Glad to see you all, and I think everybody's met everybody else at this point. I think it's
we have some new reps from Ladbrokes Coral.
Oh right, okay.
Daffy. Don't know where Antonio went. He disappeared. Daffy,
he was there a moment, wasn't he? And David, have we met before? I can't remember.
No. I've only been at Entain for the last 4 or 5 months. So okay. I look after BI and analytics for the UK business. So I probably can't say the whole thing, but my colleague should be able to join shortly.
Excellent. Well, as you introduce yourself, and now I realise there is a newcomer, perhaps we ought to go around and introduce ourselves. So if we can, Kathy, if you could and ask, because otherwise people don't know which order to go. So Kathy, if you could start the process.
Okay, sorry Tim, you cut out there, but I assume that was Kathy. Introduce yourself.
Yes, it was. Yes, I think someone's got some background noise going on. I think it might be you, David. Sorry, Kathy.
No worries. So I'm Kathy Hawes. I've got the best job title in the world. I'm Spatial Data Science Engineer for Sainsbury's. I work closely with Ian, and yeah, that's me.
Cool, thank you. And Martin, you're next on the screen for me.
Right, yeah, Martin Squires. Job-wise, I'm Director of Advanced Analytics for Pets at Home. Here in the capacity of kind of long-time friend of Doug, I run one of the training courses, and I've agreed to kind of slot in and help with some of the content and discussions on some of these sessions. So I'm somewhere on the agenda this morning.
Yes, yeah. And Ian, if you could introduce yourself.
Yeah, Ian Sterland. I head up the spatial analytics team in Sainsbury's Property.
And Jan?
I'm Jan Wright, co-director of Doug, and don't want to speak very much today, thank you.
Oh, you've got a croaky voice. Oh, sorry, I'll try and do my best. Lorraine.
Hi, Lorraine Johnson, a Spatial Planning Manager at Whitbread in the Location Planning team.
Brilliant, thank you. And Stephen?
Hiya, I'm Stevie Cook, and I manage innovation and POC for data science and analytics at Whitbread.
Brilliant, thank you. And I guess David, I ought to introduce myself. So I'm Tim. I'm the chair, one of the directors with Jan of Doug, and hopefully help lead the organisation forward. And I've been a statistician for, well, I was going to say longer than I care to remember, but actually I'm quite enjoying being a statistician for that long. So that would be the wrong thing. Yeah, I still enjoy being it. So there we go. Cool. So what sort of one of Doug's long-standing traditions, it started way before I was responsible for it, was to begin our meetings with what we call a cage rattling session, and really it's the opportunity for people to get off their chest anything that might be bugging them, usually with some data connection, but anything that might be bugging them within their organization that they can share amongst us when they might find it difficult to share elsewhere. And also they might be able to share it internally, but it gets an alternative perspective. And hopefully we can each benefit from it. So nobody's mentioned anything particular to myself. Are there any particular issues that are keeping you awake at night at the moment that you think we might be able to help each other on?
I've got a couple.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you.
So one is quite parochial, and it is affecting Kathy and my quality of life at the minute. And that, so we've got a number of servers that used to be on premise that we've now spun up in AWS. I guess a year and a half, a couple of years ago, and most of the time they work amazingly well, but then some of the time, and this is one of the times, the fabric of very complex domain and security integration falls over, usually because someone makes a change somewhere in tech, I think, and I suppose my observation is, firstly, we need to work harder to make sure that these things don't happen. But obviously, we have to do that through people, because the complexity of the networking and security environment is such that it's obviously way beyond us. So I guess I put that out there and invite comment. Before you comment, my second one, and this is probably just more of a something I'm coming back to, is Office for National Statistics, particularly with retail prices and retail sales. I just think that there is a wealth of stuff there that we don't get access to, and I'm coming back to that because every month I request an unpublished breakdown, which ONS are very happy to give me, to the snappily titled non-specialized food stores, and it is incredibly useful, and aligns really well with other market estimates that we sort of derive. But the fact that I have to request it every month, and I kind of keep saying, "Are you going to publish this?" so I can just download it. It's a bit of a cage rattler, and like I say, it brings me back to the fact that they've got lots of stuff that is not only useful, but actually they should be the de facto authority on certainly in our retail organisations, and a lot of the time they're not. The de facto authorities are Kantar, are Nielsen, and people like that. So there's two discuss.
No, very interesting. What I'm going to suggest is, if there are, so we can just manage the time. Are there any other? I mean, Ian's got the advantage of having put the marker down first. But are there any other things we'd like to discuss in the next 15-20 minutes that you want to add into that process, or are those two sufficient for us to go on? I'm sure we could fill the time with those two. They're quite meaty things. But anything else anybody wants to discuss? Just pick up my pen.
Happy to wait till next time. Those two sound interesting.
Okay, thank you, Stevie. Okay, so the first one, I guess, is this issue of I guess accessibility to cloud-based services, isn't it, as opposed to the localized services, which even then had their issues. But I as I say, I'll start it off by at least sharing I share your grief, if you like, and sometimes resolve it that actually security and convenience inevitably clash, and as things go outside, I guess the security has to happen at each time, doesn't it, rather than it happening more globally. You can't go within an organizational wall and just sit there anymore, can you? You're constantly going through this external wall. But I have phone numbers, and I just ring somebody else up and say help at different times. I'll shut up now because I'm apt to. People will like the sound of my own voice. Martin, you look like you're.
For what it's worth,
Tim, you need to sit still, closer to your mic, because you
Thank
keep
you.
fading in and out.
Willow.
The way we've tried to get around it is IT security set a policy, but then pretty much don't do anything with it. But the the actual security stuff. So I report it to the CDO. So does the group head of data engineering and platform. So the responsibility for all of that stuff sits within the same team in the CDO, which means it doesn't make it perfect, but it does mean I know exactly who to give ear rate to and kind of go, Brian, you've stuffed us up. What that, Brian? What have you done? And it at least kind of gets stuff resolved a bit quicker, I think. And it seems to work. We're on Google Cloud. It still seems to cock up, but at least it means I can get straight on through alerts and monitoring. All sit within our area. So if something goes weird, the alerts kick in straight away. It doesn't fix it, but it makes the fix fast.
Antonio, I know you just come back. Unfortunately, we introduced each other, and we now moved on to our what we call our cage rattling session, where we discuss things on our mind. And the current one is use of cloud-based services now, and the frustrations it can generate. So I don't know if you've got any shared experience, if you like.
Hi there, apologies for that. My computer decided to reboot and put all the updates now at 11 o'clock for some reason. For cloud experience, yes, I have some experience. For me, the frustration I have in the past, not with Entain, but in the past regarding the cloud, is the price. They're way more expensive, so it's harder to pitch, for directors and such to move into cloud space. And later on, when you get the bills, you have to defend like why we have moved to the cloud base if it's more pricey. They have it on premise, the servers and such. So
that's interesting because it's often sold at the beginning as being, well, it's a lower cost of entry, isn't it? But a much larger lifetime cost, I think, which is why all these organizations like it in the end, isn't it?
yeah, but because if you have already the servers on premise, you have to pitch for the extra cost, and now it's going to be like have it on cloud, and that was my frustration.
So sorry, Stevie, I see your hand. It was hiding behind my agenda.
That's okay. I was just going to mention that we also have similar issues, or have had similar issues in the past. Sounds like between you, me, and Martin, we've got the trifecta of providers, because we're with Azure, you're with AWS, and Martin said he was with Google. So I guess the grass isn't necessarily greener on the other side. But what I would say is that we found, as has always been the case, that those that are doing POC and development end up needing to bend the rules or have specific permissions or ways of working that don't quite meet the security standards. And that's been the case throughout my whole career, regardless of what implementation we're talking about. So for cloud, for us, the thing that doesn't work is we use Databricks, which is a notebooking software that accesses some of our Azure databases, SQL databases, that kind of thing. It doesn't currently support multi-factor authentication, which is the security standard that we've got in the business for external access to stored data. So because we're using that to stand up ETLs and processes that happen programmatically and regularly, they're not compatible with MFA. So we have had to organize credential-based access, which is slightly against our security policy, just to make that work. So I think we're sort of in a similar situation where it's always a hard one between the two. And then Antonio, just in terms of cost, for us, we found that left unchecked, if you give people access to these cloud-based, especially something like Databricks, where you can spin up a distributed computing cluster that can then tick over and run a load of work. As people's experience with the various languages and things improves, their efficiency improves. So we've had to basically create dashboards that let us track cost by team, because you can just suddenly see somebody turn a cluster on and then run it for 48 hours, and it gets very expensive very quickly. So that's something we've had to sort of learn to do quite quickly. But I think we've got it under wraps now. It's definitely sustainable now. But yeah, I share all of your pain.
Ian, the hands really help me. Yeah, Ian.
Yeah, just on the cost element. So as a group sort of analytics data platform, we use Snowflake. Again, it's sat in AWS, which is great for us and the servers that we've sort of spun up locally for our team. But what it does mean, it's sort of spawned a new branch of analytics, I think, within the organisation, which is actually looking at not only the number of queries that get run, who run them, but how efficiently they are, structured and written and developed. Because we are, I think as an organisation, we're now into well into six figures as a monthly cost for all of that activity. So it's like I say, it's it requires its own analytics now.
Yeah. Martin, please.
Yeah, that one has been a source of many rousing pets in the last 12 months because we tried to put in similar monitoring, and the result was two sets of rows. One of them was because we do a regular reward mailer for the loyalty scheme, which uses a shit ton of money. That just uses a lot of processing. And the first time we put the monitoring in, somebody in data engineering stopped it running because they said it was using too much money, and we nearly missed the printers. So that was delightful. We had to kind of do the never do that again. And the other one was a trade-off between somebody who was monitoring individual users, and you've got that trade-off between one of the exec just wants something that afternoon. And if the guy writing the code had 2 days to write the code, he would write something that runs a lot better. But if he just needs an answer out for the chief operating officer that afternoon, he's going to write some slightly crappy code and it's going to cost an extra tenner. And we've had he uses a lot of money. Yeah, he does, because he deals with most of the questions that come from the CEO that are really quick ones. And yes, he doesn't write great code, but it's not worth writing great code for that. So yeah, we've had all sorts of rows on that one.
So quick code costs money, sort of thing.
Yeah, we've had to almost get a setup of, if it's under 50 quid that somebody's cost because they've had to run something in an afternoon, don't come bugging me that somebody's written some fairly crappy SQL. It's like, yeah, I know they have. They just had to write it. They had 20 minutes to write that. And if they'd have had any longer to write it, they'd have written it better. But frankly, in 20 minutes, it got the answer, and it was accurate, which is all I really care about for the sake of about 25 quid. If it's going to cost a few thousand, different ballgame. But we've had to also do a list of, here's the approved jobs that you do not shut down and touch, because I know they cost a lot of money, but actually they're there for a reason and we've got to run them. We'll review them once a quarter or something and make sure we're running them properly, but don't, for God's sake, ever stop them. Or not without phoning me up and asking anyway.
I was just thinking that what this short conversation has illustrated is how us as analysts end up having to, because we end up always regularly doing things that are more bespoke, end up breaching things that are set up for actual efficient operations. And that applies to the security issue that you mentioned, Stevie, in that we need to be a bit more ad hoc, just so that we can do the ad hoc things which then breach the security setups. And it applies as well to the different types of analytics that we might run. And just the fact that you're creating ad hoc code, I know the first time you write something, the priority is to just make it get an answer that you need. The next round is to make it do it more efficiently, but efficiency is not, it can't be the first thing you ask. And so in the short term, we breach a whole bunch of other protocols. But Ian, I guess the original sort of bugbear wasn't either of those things, though, was it? It was more the day-to-day frustration, was it, of that interruption? Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if I go back 30 years to when I started my career, then all we had was a PC, connected to a file server, and everything else you did yourself, including, as we said, in the same vein of a lot of what we do today, particularly around proof of concepts, is you would build and maintain your own
Indeed.
PC. I'd still think great skills to have if you've got that level of sort of resourcefulness and confidence, even when things go horribly wrong and you have to find a solution out. But we are in a world now where clearly if as has happened to us, we've got a number of remote servers, we've got we've got a password and account system which essentially recognizes us, gives us a remote connection file, so we never know a password,
Right.
But effectively, when that fails, you're completely powerless. You're completely locked out. You are in the hands clearly of your tech teams. I think, and I suppose I would echo Stevie's point in that if you are like we are in a peripheral part of the organisation. So our main analytics teams are part of tech. They're very aligned to tech and the chief data officer's sort of role and the CTO's role. But when you're sort of a little bit away from that and you're running a slightly different tech stack, it probably just gets a bit harder, really. So I mean, note to Kathy, note to me in particular. We need to drive out better relationships, and actually have a bit of an autopsy into what's happened this time. I think.
Stevie, I think I couldn't quite work out which hand went up first, but I'll go for Stevie.
Oh, I'll be quick anyway. It was just to sort of to wrap up with what you both said, to be honest. So the way that I've always described this and tried to use as validation for change of process or whatever is that if you are in an organization that wants to iterate and improve its processes, reporting, use of data, or anything like that, there is a mandate for a team that is not following the standard BAU, because by definition, that is what innovation is. So from a security standpoint, if you're using new data or new tech or whatever, you're going to have to do it in a way that's not the BAU. And if you're producing analytics, you're going to produce something inefficient on the road to get to that new productionized piece of reporting or whatever. So that's exactly the role of my team. And then once we've done something, we hand it off to our BI team or our ops team or whatever. So I think getting them on board with that from a more sort of traditional IT standpoint is really, really helpful, because they get that you're then, you're firefighting in the innovation sense, I suppose. So that's really useful.
Yeah, thanks for that. It's a very good observation, Martin.
One thing to remember that I've done a couple of times that has worked is I have gone into full-scale awkward bastard mode with IT a couple of times. But the reason and why I've done it is I know my teams have been shadow IT or tagged as such for forever. And at some stage, IT will come begging my team for assistance on something. And I have blatantly used blackmail. So basically, I've said hey, when you were discussing role-based privileges last week, we weren't IT. Fuck off. It's like we can't help you. And my price for helping is you look at your role-based privileges in GCP and you allocate us as IT developer. We ended up negotiating how many of my team and which ones, but we effectively, IT kind of said, okay, him, her. Yeah, okay, they're in the circle of trust. We'll make them IT developers on the Google stack, which means I've now got some people, because IT have effectively had to acknowledge their technical skills because they wanted to borrow them, and I wouldn't give them unless they basically caved and altered how my people were described on Google. It's worked.
Yeah, this is the value you get out of Martin's training courses. Kathy.
Love the awkward bastard comment. We've gone from a circulation of 3 people on the tech email to, I think the last email has got about 50 people on it, and it's just but I can see things are happening now. So yeah, love it, Martin. Thank you.
Right, well, we'll probably use a bit of time, but Ian, thanks as well. Your rattlers have sort of covered the scope of Doug in a sense, in going from IT development to us thinking about how we can make the most of all that is within within ONS and rattling their cage a bit more collectively. I know it's in my role. I now sit on a number of the ONS working groups,